Margaret almost lost her grandson in the most unexpected way. The only thing that saved him was a dog who refused to obey. When Margaret discovered what was hidden in that tiny shoe, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. This is what happened. Margaret Wilson, 62, had watched her grandson Oliver every Tuesday and Thursday for over a year. Her parents worked brutal double shifts at the hospital, both nurses, both exhausted. She didn't mind. Those mornings with Oliver meant everything. Their golden retriever Bailey had been around for 7 years, calm, obedient, never caused problems. When Oliver was born, Bailey just claimed him, slept by the crib, followed him everywhere. That's what dogs do. That Tuesday morning in late September started normal. Breakfast, little sneakers, stuffed elephant in the backpack. They were heading to the park. Same 3-block walk they'd done 100 times. Margaret opened the front door. Bailey moved like lightning. He planted himself in front of Oliver, solid, unmovable. When Margaret tried to guide the boy around him, Bailey nudged Oliver back with his nose. Gentle, but absolutely firm. "Bailey, move." Nothing. The dog sat down, blocking the entire doorway. His tail wasn't wagging. His ears were up, locked on something Margaret couldn't see. She tried stepping around him with Oliver. Bailey took the boy's jacket sleeve into his mouth. Not biting, never hurting, just holding, refusing to release. 7 years, Bailey had never disobeyed a single command. Margaret's chest tightened. She knelt down, looked into the dog's eyes. "What's wrong, boy?" Bailey whined, a sound she'd heard maybe twice in his entire life. He looked at Oliver, then at her, then back at the door. The message couldn't have been clearer. This child is not leaving the house. Before we continue, if you love stories about the incredible things animals do for us, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't regret it. Margaret closed the door. Her hands were shaking as she dialed Michelle's number. "Honey, something's wrong with Bailey. He won't let us leave." "Mom, he's probably just being protective." Michelle sounded distracted, busy. "No!" Margaret's voice was sharper than she intended. "This is different. This is really different." Silence on the other end. Then, "Mom, if he's that insistent, maybe you should listen. Remember that article about dogs detecting things we can't? I'm leaving work now." Margaret hung up her phone, stared at Bailey, at Oliver, who was now sitting on the floor petting the dog's head like this was all a game. Gas leak? She rushed to the stove. Nothing. Burners off, no smell. Someone dangerous outside? She moved to the window, careful, watching. Mrs. Chen across the street watering her roses. The mailman 3 houses down. Normal suburban morning. Everything looked normal. But Bailey knew something she didn't. An hour crawled by. The dog didn't budge from his position. Every single time Margaret approached the door with Oliver, Bailey stood and blocked them. Not aggressive, determined, desperate. Margaret's mouth drew dry. Whatever this was, it was specifically about Oliver leaving this house. By noon, Margaret called Robert. Her son-in-law promised to leave work immediately. His voice was tight, worried. While she waited, Margaret did something she hadn't done in years. She got down on the floor and really examined Oliver, checked him the way she used to check Michelle when something seemed off but she couldn't name it. The boy looked perfect, playing with blocks, laughing. No fever, breathing normal, skin color good. Then she saw it. Oliver's left shoe. There was a tiny gap where the sole was separating from the upper, and wedged in that gap, barely visible, was something small, cream-colored, too uniform to be a rock. Margaret's heart stopped. Her hands trembled as she removed Oliver's shoe. When she pulled the object free and held it up to the light, the room started spinning. A pill. Medication. Stuck in her grandson's shoe. The memory hit her like cold water. 2 days ago, Harold from next door, the elderly widower who lived alone, had been visiting her, showing her his new heart medication, explaining how these pills were keeping him alive. They'd been sitting on the front porch. Oliver had been playing right there. Harold's one pill had fallen. Oliver's shoe had picked it up. Margaret couldn't breathe. She'd seen the warning label on Harold's prescription bottle, bold red letters, "Keep away from children." Serious cardiac medication, the kind that could stop an adult heart, regulate dangerous rhythms. On a 3-year-old? If they'd gone to the park, if Oliver had been running around the way toddlers do, jumping, climbing, moving, that pill would have worked itself loose from his shoe. And Oliver put everything in his mouth, everything. Margaret's vision blurred. The park was 3 blocks away, no hospital nearby. If Oliver had swallowed that pill, they would have had minutes, maybe. Bailey had smelled it. That incredible nose, capable of detecting chemical compounds humans couldn't begin to perceive, had picked up the scent of that medication, and every instinct in that dog's body had screamed danger. The child cannot leave, not with that poison attached to him. When Robert and Michelle burst through the door 20 minutes later, Margaret was on the couch, Oliver in her lap, Bailey's head resting on her knee. She held up the pill with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. "This was in his shoe," she whispered. "Harold's heart medication. It was stuck in his shoe." Michelle's face went white. She called her family doctor, put it on speaker. The doctor's voice was grave, professional. If a child that age ingested that medication, you would have approximately 10 to 15 minutes before cardiac arrest, maybe less. The phone slipped from Michelle. She collapsed next to Bailey, wrapped her arms around his neck, buried her face in his golden fur, and sobbed. Robert stood frozen, hand covering his mouth, eyes wet. Margaret watched her family fall apart and pull back together in the same breath. Her heart was still racing, adrenaline still flooding her system. If you're watching this and Bailey's determination is breaking your heart, take a second to like this video and drop a comment. Has an animal ever saved you or someone you love? I read every single one. Your stories matter. That evening, after Robert and Michelle had taken Oliver home with instructions to check every corner of their house for hazards, Margaret sat alone with Bailey. She'd bought him the most expensive steak from the butcher. He'd devoured it in about 90 seconds. Now his head was back in her lap, tail thumping softly. "You saved him," Margaret said quietly, "and I almost didn't listen to you." Bailey looked up at her. Those patient brown eyes, that gentle face. Margaret had spent 62 years trusting logic, evidence, things that made sense. She'd always been skeptical about stories of animals with sixth senses, dogs who detected seizures before they happened, cats who knew their owners were dying. It all seemed exaggerated, emotional. But Bailey hadn't needed her to understand. He'd simply known, and he hadn't backed down, not for a second. The greatest wisdom doesn't always come with words. Sometimes it comes from a creature who loves without condition and trusts their instincts more than we trust ours. The next morning, Margaret called the local news station, not because she wanted attention, because she believed other people, other grandparents, other parents needed to hear this. Within a week, Bailey's face was on every news outlet in Portland, then statewide, then national. The story went viral. Margaret learned to trust differently after that September morning. When her gut whispered something she couldn't explain, she paused, listened. When people she loved tried to tell her things that didn't make immediate logical sense, she didn't dismiss them. And every time she visited Michelle's house and watched Bailey shadow Oliver's every step, closer now, more protective, she felt gratitude so deep it made her chest ache. 3 months after the incident, Harold next door passed away peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, Margaret stood up and told the whole church about how one of his pills almost killed her grandson and how a dog saved the day. Harold would have been devastated if that medication had hurt Oliver, she said. But he would also have loved this story. He always said animals were smarter than we gave them credit for. The church was silent, except for the sound of people crying. Here's what Margaret wants you to know, what she wishes she could tell every person on earth. The beings in our lives, human and animal, sometimes know things we don't. They sense dangers we can't see. They understand truths that don't fit into our logical frameworks. And sometimes, the most important thing we can do is trust them, even when it doesn't make sense, especially when it doesn't make sense. Because that's where miracles live, in the space between what we understand and what we trust anyway. In the moment we choose to believe that love, whether it comes from a person or a golden retriever with an extraordinary nose, knows things our minds haven't figured out yet. Bailey is 12 now, older, slower. He still follows Oliver everywhere. And Margaret? She never opens a door without thinking about that Tuesday morning when a dog refused to move and saved a life. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you why we share our lives with animals, or if you've experienced a moment when an animal's instinct made all the difference, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories like this. And please tell us in the comments, what's your story? When has an animal in your life known something you didn't? Your engagement helps us share these moments with more people who need to hear them. Next week, I'm bringing you another incredible true story about a rescue that defied all logic. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about stories that remind us we're not alone in this world. And thank you, Bailey. Good boy. The very best boy.